Welcome back to Sip and Talk. I'm Joe.
Let's do it.
Today, we're tackling a concept that is, well, absolutely central and incredibly contentious in the relationship between China and Taiwan.
Yeah, we're talking about the idea of motherland, or Oju Zugo in Mandarin.
Exactly. It's a term just loaded with meaning, history, competing claims.
And we've got a stack of sources here that really peel back the layers. We're looking at analyses on the whole motherland thing, detailed explanations of strategies like United Front and what was the other one? Reverse United Front.
Right, Reverse United Front, and even transcripts digging into specific examples, like that Taiwanese online personality's visit to China. And another deep dive's take on countering propaganda. So our mission today is to unpack these sources with you. We want to figure out what motherland truly signifies in this, complex context.
Why it gets such strong reactions, how different sides actually use the term strategically.
Yeah, and what it tells us about the ongoing dynamics between the PRC and Taiwan. We're really trying to get past the headlines here, dig into the specifics from the material you shared.
Get ready, because we're going to explore some kind of surprising historical bits and really get into the strategic thinking behind the language itself.
All right, so let's start with the basics. Hu Zuguo. What's the core meaning, just based on our sources?
Well, the sources define it as ancestors' country, or, simply homeland.
Ancestors' country.
Yeah, it's got deep cultural, historical roots, and naturally it often carries a pretty strong nationalistic feeling. It's about, where your people come from.
That phrase alone feels powerful.
Right.
But the sources, they immediately point out that the political use of the term is really different depending on where you stand.
Precisely. In mainland China, under the PRC, motherland pretty much always means the People's Republic of China.
Right.
And crucially, under their One China principle, that explicitly includes Taiwan as part of that motherland. That's key.
So for the PRC, motherland equals PRC plus Taiwan. Simple as that for them. How's it used in Taiwan then?
Well, in Taiwan, within the Republic of China framework, it can refer to the Republic of China itself.
The ROC.
Yeah. And sometimes that usage leans on the fact that the ROC was founded earlier than the PRC.
Ah, okay, that brings us right to the heart of the rhetoric, doesn't it? Why does the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, keep telling Taiwan to return to the motherland?
That language, it flows directly from the PRC's core One China policy. They view Taiwan legally and politically as a province that broke away during the Civil War and, well, eventually has to unify under Beijing.
And they're serious about that.
The sources are clear. The PLC hasn't ruled out using force to make it happen, especially if Taiwan formally declares independence or, fundamentally rejects that One China idea. The stakes are high.
So using a word like motherland, which sounds kind of warm, familial, historical, it's actually paired with this underlying threat.
Exactly. It's part of the political strategy for unification. By framing it as a return, they try to make it sound natural, inevitable, like just history unfolding, not a political takeover.
It's a way to normalize their claim, basically.
Yeah, and that framing gets even more interesting, maybe even kind of awkward when you look at the history the sources lay out, because there's a timeline detail that really throws a wrench in that return narrative.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, the sources really emphasize this. The Republic of China, the ROC, founded in 1912.
1912, okay. And the People's Republic of China, the PRC.
Founded much later, 1949.
Wow. Okay.
And the ROC government, they moved to Taiwan after losing the Civil War on the mainland right around 1949.
So wait, the ROC existed for, 37 years before the PRC was even established? How does that fact play into the competing claims?
Well, from the ROC perspective in Taiwan, they see themselves as the continuation of the legitimate government of all of China based on that 1912 founding. They were, there first.
And the PRC, controlling the mainland since 49, just sees the ROC in Taiwan as defunct, a renegade.
That's pretty much the PRC stance. They control the territory. They're recognized by most countries. They see the ROC's claim as having expired, basically.
But that historical gap, 1912 versus 1949, it leads to that really intriguing question you brought up, and the sources discuss it too. Given the ROC was founded first, could Taiwan, as the place where that ROC government has been since 1949, actually be considered the true motherland?
Right. That totally flips the script on the PRC narrative.
So what do the sources say? Is there a definitive answer to that?
Well, the sources are pretty clear that there isn't one single absolute answer. It's not like a math problem.
Okay.
From the viewpoint of someone in Taiwan who identifies with the ROC's history, Yeah, Taiwan could symbolize the true motherland. It's where that government continues.
But for the PRC?
For the PRC, the motherland is the PRC today, and that includes Taiwan. Full stop.
So it really just boils down to your political viewpoint.
Yeah.
And which version of history you accept?
Exactly. It's tied up in identity legitimacy, not just historical dates. The sources actually use some brilliant analogies to kind of capture the absurdity of it all.
Oh, right, the house analogies. Tell us those again.
Okay, so one is like your neighbors suddenly claiming your house belongs to them.
Mm-hmm.
You, living there, holding the original deed, you just look at their address and say, hang on, I've never lived at your place. You're already in the house they claim is the motherland you need to return to.
Right. The ROC is already in Taiwan. What was the other one?
It's also about deeds, kinda. The ROC is the original account holder from 1912. The PRC is like a branch office opened in 1949.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe like a cousin who moved out ages ago, set up their own place, and now insists the original family home actually belongs at their new address. It just highlights the ROC's claim to seniority and continuity and makes the demand to return sound kind of illogical.
Okay, so we have this contested word, these competing histories. How does this feed into the strategies playing out right now?
Mm-hmm.
The sources talk a lot about United Front.
Right, the United Front. That's described as the CCP's big picture strategy towards Taiwan.
And it's not just military threats.
Oh, not at all. The sources describe it as really broad. It's about penetration, propaganda, across loads of areas. Media, culture, business, academia, even targeting Taiwanese communities overseas, using online influence campaigns, that sort of thing.
And the goal of all that?
To shape how people see things, both inside Taiwan and, internationally, pushing narratives.
What kind of narratives are we talking about?
Things like unification is historically justified, it's inevitable, Taiwan and the mainland are one big family, trying to build this shared identity focused on the PRC.
Okay.
But it's not just soft stuff. It also involves instilling fear, making it seem like resisting is pointless or that it'll only lead to bad things.
And the sources link this to cognitive warfare.
Right, directly, yeah. It's not about tanks and planes, it's a war fought in people's minds.
How do they define that, cognitive warfare?
It's using tactics like spreading disinformation, fake news, emotional manipulation, deliberately overwhelming people with information so they can't process it. Infobesity, I think one source called it.
Wow.
And manipulating social media to sow division or just push the CCP's viewpoint. The sources even lay out this kind of chilling model. Nurture, trap, kill.
Nurture, trap, kill. Explain that.
First, you nurture a friendly vibe towards the CCP, make them seem reasonable, positive. Then you trap public discussion, people's values within the framework the CCP wants. And finally, the kill part. You get people to give up resisting, maybe even adopt the CCP's view almost willingly, without even realizing they've been sort of guided there.
That is pretty intense. So if that's the CCP's playbook, what do the sources say about Taiwan's response, this reverse united front?
Yeah, the reverse united front. Tell us about that. How does Taiwan, or maybe people within Taiwan, push back against this sophisticated strategy?
Well, according to the sources, this reverse united front is Taiwan's counterpunch, basically. It uses a different set of tools, things like humor, history, logic, highlighting democratic values. The idea is to turn the CCP's own logic or propaganda back on them, or just make them contradict themselves.
That sounds smart. Any specific examples of how that actually works?
Yeah, a key one is repurposing that phrase we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Chinese people should come to Taiwan to see the real motherland.
Ah, using the CCP's own term, but flipping it.
Exactly. The sources break down why it's effective. First, like you said, it reclaims the word motherland, which the CCP tries to own. Second, it uses soft power against hard power. It's not aggressive, it's an invitation.
An invitation to see.
To see what this version of the motherland actually looks like, showcasing Taiwan's freedoms, real elections, independent courts. And yeah, the sources even mention stuff like bubble tea and shopping vouchers. Like, these are the features of a desirable homeland.
So contrasting the democratic reality with the PRC narrative.
Right. And it's way harder for the CCP to argue against an invitation to see freedom than it is to just dismiss a counter slogan. The sources make that funny historical point again. It's like saying, thanks, but as your ancestor, I've never seen such an unfilial descendant trying to claim my house. It uses that 1912 versus 1949 history, but with humor.
And the sources suggest Taiwan's culture is kind of perfect for this.
Yeah, they talk about Taiwan's strong creativity and satire culture. You see it all over internet memes, viral clips from the legislature, those lively political talk shows. They're constantly using wit to pick apart propaganda.
What about hitting back at specific CCP narratives? Any examples of counter-arguments?
Loads. Okay, so against the claim that Taiwan's ruling party, the DPP, creates conflict just by being pro-Taiwan, the counters are things like, well, democracy is messy sometimes, but autocracy is just boring.
I like that.
Or being able to yell at your government is actually a sign of national strength. And the Winnie the Pooh means targeting Xi Jinping and censorship. That's another example the sources mentioned.
Classic. How about countering the flexing of military muscle? The threats.
There's this idea pushed back that a CCP attack on Taiwan would actually cause the CCP regime itself to collapse. The sources mention analyses questioning if the PLA is really ready for a major conflict. Lack of recent combat, internal issues like corruption may be getting in the way of their shiny new hardware. Plus, Taiwan showing resolve, like the Kinmen Coast Guard incidents mentioned, that also counters the narrative of weakness.
Okay, and what about the push for unification based on how great and advanced mainland China is now?
The counters there are often simple and direct. China is great, Taiwan is even better. Or that playful one. Unification isn't as good as a bubble tea unification round. Basically saying people want good lives, not politics.
Focusing on quality of life.
Yeah, and the sources note the reality seems to be more people wanting to leave the mainland or come to Taiwan, not the other way around. There's even that dark humor jab about infrastructure. Maybe our bridges are sturdier, referencing collapses on the mainland.
Oof. Okay, last one. The narrative that the U.S. is an unreliable ally for Taiwan.
The common response cited is something like, okay, maybe the U.S. is unreliable sometimes, but the CCP is even less reliable. End of the day, we have to rely on ourselves.
Self-reliance as the key.
Exactly. The sources compare CCP promises to, like, Singles' Day sales, big hype, questionable delivery. They point to hidden data in China, like youth unemployment, or the property market mess with Evergrande, suggesting things aren't as perfect as Beijing claims. So while allies matter, Taiwan's own value, like in semiconductors, is its real leverage. And the sources add, maybe those U.S.'s unreliable stories are themselves being pushed as part of the cognitive war.
It really sounds like this reverse united front uses creativity, humor, even absurdity as a shield.
Totally. The sources call it the weaponization of cognitive defense. For a free society, using openness, laughter, and facts, often delivered cleverly to push back against top-down propaganda. It's using freedom as the weapon.
Now, let's bring this down to a specific case. The sources mention that Taiwanese online personality, Quan Cheng. How does his situation fit into all this?
Right. The YouTube source you flagged gets into his planned trip to mainland China. And what was striking was how Chinese state media immediately jumped on it, reporting it heavily.
So instant official attention.
Yeah, big platforming. But then things got a bit weird. He seemed to backtrack or get hesitant about meeting certain people there, like Shou Xiaodong, the source, calls him a sensitive figure who's basically blocked in China. This was after Quan Cheng had kind of said friends could come meet him.
So what was the interpretation? Why the trip? Why the CCP's welcome?
The source suggested that from the CCP's angle, the main goal was probably to use his large online following, to have him show the beauty of China to his Taiwanese audience, basically use him to project a positive image, counteract negative views.
Even though he'd previously made some pretty strong anti-CCP comments, that's quite a contrast.
It is, yeah. And the sources really highlighted that. Despite his history of criticism, China's Taiwan Affairs Office welcomed him.
So what's the big takeaway from his example in terms of understanding the strategy and the whole cognitive battleground?
Well, according to the source, it really shows that for the CCP, past criticisms don't always matter as much as current influence or usefulness. If someone can help push their narrative now, they might get a pass. So utility trumps past ideology.
Seems like it in this case. This personality, whatever his own reasons were, kind of became a piece on the board, someone the CCP could potentially use. The source also contrasted his treatment with others, like that critic Orang, who apparently faces threats, suggesting the CCP calibrates its approach based on whether someone is seen as useful or just plain harmful to their goals.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, it's incredibly clear that Motherland isn't just some neutral historical term here.
Not even close. It's packed with history, sure, but also emotion and, well, a whole lot of political strategy from both sides.
You have the PRC using it as part of this absolute demand for unification under their terms. And then you have actors in Taiwan using it really creatively in this reverse united front to challenge that, assert a different identity, maybe even reclaim the word itself.
And like the sources really drive home whether Taiwan is the true motherland, That's not really a question of fact you can look up. It's fundamentally about political perspective, which history you choose to emphasize.
Yeah. Understanding these different views and how language itself is used as a tool, it's just crucial if you want to make sense of the information flying around about China-Taiwan relations. Language is definitely a battleground.
It really shows you the power words have in geopolitics.
So maybe here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on, building on what we've dug into from the sources. Ancestors' country has this deep personal cultural meaning, right? How does the purely political, sometimes even coercive way authorities on both sides use the term motherland? How does that affect or maybe even damage that deeper personal connection people might feel to the idea?
That's a heavy one. And maybe flip it around too. If, like the reverse United Front humorously suggests, the invitation is come to Taiwan to see the real motherland, what does the reality of that free democratic society actually reveal? What does it say about what a homeland could be, especially when compared to the narratives pushed elsewhere?
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.